Hi, my name is Lilika and today we're going to be looking at the Syllabus 49093 AS Level English, this time specifically at the linguistic elements that you need to know for the AS Level examinations. Today we're going to be looking at word classes such as, nouns, pronouns, all of that, as well as the text, paragraph and sentence level structures that you need to be aware of if you want to do well in the exams. So let's get right into it. First off, we're talking about word classes. So firstly, we have nouns. So nouns are a person, a place, a concept, or an object. There are two types of nouns. There are common nouns and proper nouns. Common nouns are kind of vague, whereas proper nouns are way more specific. So an example for common noun would be city, whereas a proper noun would be Johannesburg. It's much more specific, right? Or for example, a common noun would be person, whereas a proper noun would be Lilika, which is again a lot more specific, and proper nouns are always written with a capital letter at the front. So next up we have pronouns. These are words you use in place of specific nouns, i.e. instead of saying Lilika you say she, her. There are many types of pronouns. She, her would be a personal pronoun, but let's not get into all of the specific pronouns that there are. You can go check them out if you want, but for the scope of this video, I just decided to rather exclude that from this video. Next up, we have adjectives. So these are words that describe nouns. They can be right before the noun in a sentence or at the end of a sentence. For example, the green apple versus the apple is green. In the first example, the word green, which is the adjective, is in front of the noun, whereas in the second example, the adjective is after the noun. So it would be the apple is green, right? Next up, we have verbs. So there are two types of verbs. There are action verbs. Those refer to literal actions such as she jumped or he ran. And then there are also non-action verbs such as to be or to do, which are still referring to something that someone's doing, but they're just not as specific and physical as an action verb would be. Then following verbs, we have adverbs, which are words that describe verbs. So for example, in the sentence, she ran quickly, quickly would be the adverb, right? So an adverb is always describing the verb. Next up, we have prepositions. These tell us the relationship between words in a sentence. For example, the dog is in the kennel. The man went down the mine. I bought everything but the carpet. Conjunctions, these link ideas together and allow us to make complex sentences, which we'll talk about in a second. For example, but and are conjunctions. They will generally combine two parts of a sentence. Next up, articles. There are only two articles, it's pretty easy to remember. The two of them are a and the, as in a tree and the leader. There's definite articles and indefinite articles, which again is very easy to remember because there are only two of them. A definite article describes something specific, i.e. did you climb the tree, for example, whereas indefinite articles describe something general, i.e. did you climb a tree. It could be any tree, whereas the tree is very specific. Interjections have no grammatical value. Those are more conversational. For example, well, hey. Those you will generally use more so in dialogue than any other place in an essay. So they rarely will be used in essays because there's generally not much dialogue in essays. You'd more so use interjections in narrative writing and maybe descriptive writing, but not really. Prefixes are little pieces of words that you put at the beginning of a sentence to kind of change their meaning. So for example, non, inter and post. For example, instead of just galactic, you could say intergalactic, which changes the meaning of the word. Suffixes, on the other hand, are just pieces of words that you put at the end of a sentence to change their definition. So for example, instead of saying person, you can say personal, which would be adding the al at the end of it. And yeah, again, it just changes the definition of the word. Contractions are just words that have been made shorter. So for example, instead of saying I am, you can say I'm. Instead of saying are not, you can say aren't. Instead of saying here is, you can say here is, and instead of going to, you can say gonna. Those are contractions that you generally wouldn't use in an essay because contractions are generally a sign of a less formal tone, and in most essays you want to adopt a more formal tone. So contractions you won't see much in more formal essays, which is what most essays are. Okay, with word classes out of the way, let's move on to the different structures of a text. I'm going to go down from the smallest to the biggest type of structures. So we're going to go sentence structure, then paragraph structure, and then text level structure. So first off, sentence structure. So there are 4 types of sentences. There are simple sentences, compound sentences, complex sentences, and complex compound sentences. This topic has a lot more to do with grammar, so get ready, because it's not super complicated, but you'll have to use your brain a bit, and it might be confusing at first, but if you watch this video a few times or go down into the description and check out the blog for this video, you'll kind of get the hang of it, I promise. Okay, so first up, the most simple of sentences, aptly called simple sentence. It consists of just one independent clause, which is a subject and a verb, and it contains a complete idea. So it's a standalone sentence, right? So there are a few words we need to define here. So first off, a clause consists of a subject and a predicate. A subject being a part of a sentence that contains the person or thing performing the action in a sentence. It's usually a noun. A predicate is the part of a sentence or clause containing a verb and saying something about the subject. For example, went home in the sentence John went home. John would be the subject, whereas went home would be the predicate. And when you put a subject and a predicate together, that would be a clause. And a simple sentence contains just one independent clause. Okay, stick with me. This will make more sense as we go along. Next up, we have a compound sentence. So a compound sentence consists of 2 independent clauses joined by a semicolon or conjunction, and they could each form a sentence alone. Remember, an independent clause can form its own sentence alone because it expresses a complete idea. So a compound sentence would be an independent clause plus a conjunction plus an independent clause. A complex sentence is an independent and a dependent clause. A dependent clause contains a subject and a verb but does not express a complete thought. However, it starts with a subordinating conjunction or a relative pronoun. Right, again, let's define some words here. A subordinating conjunction is a word or phrase that links a dependent clause to an independent clause. And a relative pronoun is a word that introduces a dependent clause and connects it to an independent clause. Some examples of relative pronouns would be who, whom, whose, which, and that. Those are all relative pronouns that introduce a dependent clause and then again connects it to an independent clause. So a complex sentence would look something like this. It would be an independent clause plus a subordinating conjunction plus a dependent clause. All right, you still with me? Last one, okay? So the last one is a complex compound sentence. This type of sentence consists of 2 independent clauses joined by a subordinating conjunction to one or more dependent clauses joined by a coordinating conjunction. A coordinating conjunction is a word that joins 2 elements of equal grammatical rank and syntactic importance. They can join 2 verbs, 2 nouns, 2 adjectives, 2 phrases, or most importantly, 2 independent clauses. So to recap, a subordinating conjunction joins 2 dependent clauses to an independent clause, whereas a coordinating conjunction joins 2 independent clauses. There are 7 coordinating conjunctions: for, and, nor, but, or, yet, and so, and very conveniently, these spell out fanboys, so that's an easy way to remember those. So at the end of the day, a complex compound sentence may look something like this: an independent clause plus a subordinating conjunction plus a dependent clause plus the coordinating conjunction plus a dependent clause. Again, if this is confusing to you, that makes sense. It was very confusing to me too when I was doing research for this video, but I would really suggest going to the first link in the description of the video, to the blog for this video, so you can kind of read through it a few times, and that will probably help it stick in your brain and you kind of start understanding it the more you read it. Okay, that's the heavy grammar out of the way. We won't be touching grammar for the rest of this video. Let's move on to paragraph structure. A paragraph is just a bunch of sentences that are all about one topic. A paragraph starts with a topic sentence which states the main idea of that paragraph. It's just a general statement. Then the paragraph will go into an explanation or definition, which is optional. So this would be clarifying any difficult or unclear terms in the topic sentence. But again, that's optional. Only do that when or if needed. Next, a paragraph will contain evidence. This supports or develops the main idea with facts, examples, experiments, studies, arguments, quotes, etc. Next up, there'll be a comment. So this explains what the evidence means and how it relates to your point. and it supports or develops the evidence. For example, it may contain contrasting points or an analysis of the evidence, which broadens the discussion. And then lastly, every paragraph will have a concluding sentence. So this states the implications or consequences of the paragraph, links it back to the topic sentence and main idea, and then links forwards to the next paragraph. If you have many paragraphs right after each other, which is basically what an essay is, you want the last sentence of each paragraph to segue into the first sentence of the next paragraph to make your paragraphs flow together in a logical manner. Next up, let's look at the big picture. This is text level structure, so the structure that your essay should have. So first up, you'll have your intro. In your intro, you'll have introductory information. So this would be an opening sentence or an interesting fact or quotation. This is kind of like your hook. You want this to grab the reader's attention and get their interest going for the topic that you're going to be writing about. In your intro, you want to explain your thesis. You don't want this to be super long. You want your entire intro to be fairly short, just a few sentences long. But in your thesis, you want to write a sentence or statement describing the purpose of your paper. And in an exam setting, this must answer the prompt. You want to list everything you will be talking about in your body paragraphs within reason, but you just want to list the main ideas that you will be covering in the rest of your essay. Generally, in your intro, you want to, as quickly and as succinctly as possible, cover the topic that you're going to be talking about, your stance on that topic, and then the reasons you have taken that stance on the topic you're going to be talking about. Again, you don't want to be long-winded about this. Maybe 4 sentences at most should be the length of your intro, but this will be the foundation for the rest of your essay, so you want to make sure that it is a good and solid foundation. Alright, after your intro, you will jump straight into the first body paragraph. So as I mentioned in the paragraph structure portion of this video, you want to start off with the topic sentence. This just describes what your paragraph is about. You want to write about the first item listed in your thesis statement. So when you listed all of the topics or the main points you're going to be covering, you want your first paragraph to be about the first point that you mentioned. In your paragraph, you want to stick to the topic. Don't deviate too much because that will just make your essay super confusing. You want each paragraph to be about one specific point. Make sure the point you are discussing relates to your thesis and your stance and the reason you have that stance on the topic. If needed, you can explain how it relates. Generally, it should be pretty obvious how it relates though. So as much as you don't want it to be vague, you also don't want to be super long-winded. So just use your common sense there. If you really think it's confusing, then explain why. It's up to you, really. Sorry, that's a bit vague, but a lot of essay writing just comes down to practice. And as you write more essays, you'll start to get more of a feel for what the line is between over-explaining and being super vague. So it'd be like that sometimes. The second body paragraph, again, you will have a topic/transition sentence. This is just a topic sentence that segues into your next paragraph. You just want to make sure that your paragraphs move from one topic to another logically and smoothly. So the last sentence of your first paragraph and the first sentence of your second paragraph, they should work together to segue from one topic to another. Again, in each paragraph that you're writing, you want to stick to the topic, you want to make sure it all relates to your thesis, and if needed, you can explain how. Again, keeping what I mentioned before in mind. You will then have as many paragraphs as you need to explain your point of view in the essay, and then right at the end, in your last paragraph, that will be your conclusion. So your conclusion will start off with your final transition sentence. In your conclusion, you want to sum up all your major points, not verbatim. You want to use different vocabulary and only the major points. You don't want to just rewrite your entire essay again in your conclusion. You just want to touch on the major points to kind of bring it back up into the mind of the reader so that you can effectively rephrase your thesis and link the point you made in the body of your essay to your final conclusion or point of view, given the information in your body. So really, your conclusion is just tying everything together and restating your thesis given the information in the body of your essay. And then lastly, you want to make a universal comment on your topic that anyone can connect with to really kind of tie a nice bow around the rest of your essay that you have written. And there you are. Those are the linguistic elements of the 9093 AS level English syllabus for Cambridge International. I hope you found this video interesting. If you did, please leave a like. If you have any questions, leave a comment. And if you really like this video, do subscribe. This is the type of content that I am focusing on right now. So if you want more of this, hit subscribe. You can always unsubscribe later. Again, if you need to just go over this topic a bit again, you can click the first link in the description of the video. It'll take you over to the blog that I made for this specific video so that you can read everything in text form, which often helps with absorbing information, at least in my experience. Thank you so much for watching this video. I'll see you in the next one, and good luck on your studying journey. The point that you're discussing in the